will automatically go back to normal in the state we expect? What can we do to ensure that the repeal of the law brings real meaning to people and to the environment? Also, still in the same space, we'll look at the saga of the lithium agreement. The Minister for Lands and Natural Resources tabled a new or a revised agreement before Parliament rose. Is this a better deal for Ghana, or it is worse than before? The one that was laid earlier had some concerns about royalty, why it was reduced to 5% instead of 10% in the previous one laid before Parliament could not consider it before the life of that Parliament ran out. Why should royalties, which was 10% before, be 5% now? And a few other technical issues that people have matters with. Have all of these matters been addressed? We will look at that. The world is moving towards green minerals, and lithium is one of them. If you know about electric vehicles and the quest of the world to transition, you can understand how important lithium is. And Ghana, as always, is blessed to have this in our earth. And how are we managing it? Are we benefiting from it? Are we going to ensure that we derive the maximum benefit, or we leave it to the investors and others to carry it away as we've done for gold and even oil? That is our discussion this morning. I'll take a short break. I'll return. I'll provide you some updates, introduce my guests, and then we'll get a discussion underway. This is The Big Issue. You're welcome.
Meet James. James has been searching for happiness for years. So we asked locals to point him to the source of their happiness. Until one fateful night, when his search finally came to an abrupt end. Find your happy place with GoTV. Get GoTV to enjoy a wide range of shows for the whole family. GoTV. Love it.
My name is Anita Erskine, and on December 19th and 20th, right here in Accra, Ghana, we will gather for the Diaspora Summit 2025, a defining moment in strengthening the bond between Ghana and her global family. Under the theme Resetting Ghana, the Diaspora as the 17th region, this summit, hosted by His Excellency the President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, will bring together leaders and experts from around the world to advance partnerships, explore reparations and heritage linkages, and of course, mobilize diaspora talent for national development. I invite you to be part of this powerful conversation shaping Ghana and the diaspora's future. Join us at the Accra International Conference Center, December 19th and 20th. Do register at www.diasporasummitghana.org. See you then.
You're welcome back. This is The Big Issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM. We are on ChannelOne television. We are also on YouTube. We are happy to have you join us on 020-444-7033 or 0549-986-996. Those numbers have been displayed on your screen. We'll be happy to hear you on any of the issues we are about to discuss. 3 issues we're looking at. The Bawku Mediation Report has been presented. Government has accepted and adopted the report, set up a 1 billion revitalization fund for the Bawku area to bring the place up economically so it can compete and it can do well. A number of things were mentioned in the report by Otumfuo. The government has accepted that, and that means that government will take steps to ensure a smooth implementation of the report. All of that has been, the report and the matters have been decided now. It is the implementation and reconciliation that we expect. How should the parties behave? How should government position itself? Civil society and people in the security space. what should they do as well? And you and I, what should we be doing to encourage the people in the area to continue to embrace peace? Also, the LI 2462 has finally been repealed. What does that mean for the fight against galamsey and the protection of our forest reserves? This is some victory, but is this enough to make us rest on our oars, or it is just the beginning of another part of the fight against galamsey? Now, it's mining in forest reserves is totally outlawed, and we hope that our water bodies will begin to breathe properly and get cleared up. Also, the lithium agreement has been taken back to Parliament. A few things have been tweaked here and there. There were initial discussions about why the royalties in there was reduced from 10% in the previous one to 5%. Civil society organizations were up in arms against government about what they think about it, and they say that the agreement doesn't put Ghana in a good light. It doesn't appear to be giving Ghana good value for money. We will look at all of that and see if the new one laid before Parliament is taking care of all of these. Now, let me provide you some updates. Government of Ghana has announced a 1 billion cedi Bawku Revitalization Fund to drive post-conflict reconstruction and development in the Bawku area of the Upper East region. The initiative follows the endorsement of the Bawku Conflict Mediation Report presented by His Royal Majesty Otumfuo Osei-Tutu Asante-Hene. This was announced in a statement signed by the Minister of State in charge of Government Communications, Felix Ofosu-Kwakye, on Wednesday, December 17, 2025. The fund, to be disbursed over 3 years from 2026 to 2028, will target critical infrastructure and socioeconomic recovery projects, including roads, healthcare, and educational facilities, among others. President John Mahama has directed that the fund be managed by a high-level committee chaired by the Finance Minister, Kesel Atuban Forcing. Meanwhile, Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II has recommended the strict enforcement of Ghana's existing laws recognizing Asigri Abugrago Azoka II as a lawful Bawku Naba as the most critical step towards restoring lasting peace in Bawku and the wider Kusasi traditional area. In his mediation report on the protracted Bawku conflict, as read during the presentation to government at the Jubilee House, the Otumfuo stated that no chief or traditional authority stands above the Constitution and the decisions of the court. Let's hear him, Otumfuo Osei-Tutu II, speak.
Unfortunately, the law as it stands now makes Asigri Abugrago Azoka the lawful chief of Bawku, and so it is impossible legally to do any such thing in this mediation exercise. On the question of Bawku Town, I have taken the position that the established tradition since 1931 thereabout is that the person who is Bawku Naba has the entire Kusasi area. By law and the declarations of the Supreme Court of Ghana, Asigri Abugrago Azoka is the Bawku Naba, and there cannot be any rival residing in Bawku claiming otherwise. I have impressed upon my brother the Nairi to accept that recognition by law in appreciation of the enduring brotherhood that has existed between our two kingdoms in order to ensure lasting peace and eliminate the national and international security threats that my brother himself is so concerned about. I have been candid with my brother the Nairi that the purported enskinment of Mr. Seydou Abagari as Bawku Naba cannot stand.
Yes, so that's Otumfuo at the report presentation ceremony at the Jubilee House. After the presentation, the President, John Dramani Mahama, had a few words to say. Let's hear him.
The end of this mediation gives us the opportunity to see what the way forward is in terms of bringing peace and calm. Bawku has the potential to be one of the most vibrant commercial centers in our country, and indeed it has been a center of trade. And a lot of people in Bawku have prospered, whether they are Mamprusis or they are Kusasis. Unfortunately, this conflict has turned the fortunes of Bawku. Teachers refuse to be posted there, doctors refuse to be posted there, civil servants are leaving, we're doing national service postings, and we have suspended posting national service men and women to Bawku because we cannot guarantee their safety. And so I'm pleased that Otumfuo's mediation has come to an end and that he has presented a report. And I can assure him that government would look at this report, and within the next 24 hours, government will issue a statement.
So that was President John Dramani Mahama speaking at a ceremony where Asantehene Otumfuo Setitu presented the Bawku Mediation Report to him. Now, the first part of this discussion, we have Richard Kumado, who is a security analyst, join us. Albert Yel-Yang, who is the national coordinator for WANEP, also join us. And we'll have Frank Boza, who is head of conflict management and resolution at the National Peace Council, also join us. Gentlemen, good morning. You're welcome to the program. Let me start with Richard. Richard, this should be refreshing that finally, after decades of conflict, ethnic conflict in Bawku, which before used to be a very vibrant economic township, finally, report has been submitted, presidency or government is accepted and adopted a report and set up a 1 billion revitalization fund. This should be refreshing, at least that the report has been presented and some conclusion is being brought to the process.
Samuel, good morning. You don't want me to send you an invoice, so instead of saying I'm a consultant, you say I'm an analyst.
Sorry, Richard Kumado is a security consultant, yes, and we will talk to him every now and then when matters like this come up. Yes, Richard.
The issue of Bawku has been of major concern to many persons, both home and abroad, because of the nature of devastation and how vibrant Bawku has been economically. So for me, having presented the report, I know we are close to where we want to be. Then again, if you look at the report did just three things. One, there was only one recommendation to Ghana government. Then number two, Asantehene asked for space for reconciliation. And in the course of the reconciliation, he promised to buy back all the arms he saw at Bawku to Ghana government at no cost. Then thirdly and lastly, what he did is to caution politicians in general that they should be mindful of what they say in relation to the Bawku conflict. So it was a beautiful presentation. The second point I want to make to that effect is that now we have the letter from Ghana government with the institution or asking finance minister to put a 1 billion Ghana cedis, which people said is about $87 million. I think if you're able to use this money and do the various things they wanted to do with the money in terms of school, in terms of health, in terms of security posts, and in terms of economic activities, it will go a long way to boost the economic activities of the area, and indigenous of Bawku far and near are going to benefit. But then again, you could realize that government has issued their report supporting everything Asantehene did. Our uncles from the Mapusi side have also issued a report. Our uncles from the Kusasi side have also issued a report. Then Asantehene mediation report. If you put all the four reports together, from security management point of view, knowing very well that after mediation, the next line should be reconciliation because people might have been hurt and people might have said things they are not supposed to say. I think we are very much ready for the mediation, and all other issues that has been raised or will be raised will all be tabled at the reconciliation table at Mensha. So Salam, that is where we are.
I see. Yes, it's a very delicate matter. What, in your view, should the parties be doing? We've seen a statement from the Bawku Naba acknowledging the recommendations and the report of Otumfuo and more or less extending an olive branch to the other side. What should we be doing to ensure that this delicate or fragile situation is not I mean, the situation that is fragile is made to settle properly?
Okay, so there are three things involved. For the parties, to the extent that they agree to go to mediation, it's my hope and prayer that they will agree to go to reconciliation. So whatever concerns they have and whatever issues they might have raised directly in their issue statement, the ones that they have not yet raised will all be tabled at the mediation. For the media and for all of us who comment on national issues, particularly on the Bawku conflict, there's a need to be circumspect, and we use high levels of discretion so that we do not create problems for the parties involved. Then on the part of Ghana government, the only recommendation given to them, they would need to have the courage and the boldness to enforce the recommendation. And it's also a way of maintaining law and order within the place largely. And it's just only one recommendation. Having read the government's report, I saw that they are ready to enforce the recommendation. They will have to be tactful, they will have to be mindful, and they will have to be watchful. If they are able to enforce the recommendation within the arena of mindfulness, I think that will also be done. So that is for government, that is for media, and we all those who comment on the issue, and that is for the parties. For Mensah, I know Mensah is capable, and for what Mensah has done over the years, which made them the viable option for mediation and for reconciliation using the traditional means, I have no doubt in my mind that once all the parties get to the reconciliation table, they will table all their issues, and the issues will be cordially addressed, and we will be moving towards a lasting peace within the Bawku entity.
Great. Let me speak to Albert. Albert Young is the national coordinator for the West African Network for Peace Building, ONEP. Yes, ONEP has played some role as well in bringing this matter to finality, trying to work around the issue over the years, etc. This report by Otumfuo should be refreshing, yes, as well to you. And what about its recommendations?
Okay, thank you very much, and good morning to your viewers. This is another stage we have reached as far as the Bawku issue is concerned. As you indicated, a lot has happened in Bawku, and I could say that more than any other area, as far as the energy, the resources, the time that people have spent working on the issue in Bawku. It's a very delicate matter, as we all acknowledge, and probably the reason we have traveled this far, the number of lives that have been lost in Bawku, is something that nobody wants to continue to see happening. The Otumfuo is somebody of a very high repute when it comes to issues like this. He understands the traditions, the cultures, and because of his clout, and what he is capable of doing, he again has been given this task, which he has done. And I always say that when he was involved on the Dagbon issue, and eventually we reached a certain status, I indicated that that was exemplary, and it could be inspirational to other processes, across the country and probably beyond, if they so find his services useful and he's available. And so I think that what we have gone through, I believe the parties were themselves, and they had the goodwill, for the process. And once they committed to the process and had the discussions, and eventually there are outcomes that probably they were also privy to, and the report, has been submitted to the president. I think that it is something that they should eventually commit to the implementation of those outcomes, and also looking at issues of reconciliation. Probably one would say that the report would not have been tended to deviate from what has gone on in some other avenues. For example, the parties have gone to the Judicial Committee of the Houses of Chiefs, they've gone to the court, legal court, and there were outcomes, and if you read what the Otumfuo said, that the law as it stands, it tells you that he wouldn't want to deviate or depart from any official ruling, of the state. And he emphasized that nobody is above the law, including he himself, the president, everybody that is a citizen of this country or resides within this country. So that's also one of the things that people need to pay particular attention to. His is an advice to the state that, well, having spoken to the people and listened to what they have said, I think that these are the things we need to do. Enforce the law, make sure that at least there is recognition of what the law says, and that we should encourage the people. And he indeed said he spoke with his brother Denayiri and also spoke with the Aburago, the current Bokonaba, and encourage them to look forward rather than probably trying to lament over the issues. But what I think is that very often the reality is quite difficult for people to accept. People can commit, and we've done some of these things, mediation, not at the height of Otumfuo because of his caliber, but we've done mediations, dialogues, and all that, and people will commit to the process. But then when the reality, we reach the reality, then it becomes difficult for them to, so it requires a certain more engagement. And that is where I think governments, the National Peace Council, other civil society organizations, and I could see that Richard alluded to the report, and then we have a statement coming from the Mampusi side, we have a statement coming from the Kosasi side, and one statement that I can say that both may be alluding to is the fact that we need to move forward and that we need to extend the peace leave to each other and that we need to encourage each other to be able to move forward. What I think that people should not be doing is the kind of commentaries that are being churned out, made on air and on platforms that both parties have, and on the national media, which I think sometimes is very discouraging. Because at the moment, what we are thinking about is how do we move forward? How do we get stability in Bawku, that all the damage that has been caused, the agricultural production that has ceased in the area virtually, the trade, and Bawku is one of the hubs when it comes to trade in this country, and the threat that is exposed, to us, generally as Ghana, need to stop. And so I would think that we need to engage the parties, clarify some of the recommendations that may need clarification, and also remind people of what avenues are available for them to explore should they not still be satisfied with some of the processes. But I think that largely we've reached a stage we require that there is enough security presence, and we require that the parties will restrain themselves, that they will be exploring avenues to engage, so that we can come to a certain conclusion.
Often, it's, of course, the report may favor one part, than the other. What should the parties be doing? The party that does not necessarily agree with the outcome of the process, what can it be doing? Or it just has to accept it and move on? And the party that has been favored, what should that party also be doing? And the third part is, what should the system or government be doing to ensure that there is lasting peace in the area?
I have always used these two examples, that when President Mahama lost the elections, not first it was Ado Kufuor, he was not satisfied with the outcome, but he went to court. That is a lawful avenue, and encourage their following, to restrain themselves not to engage in violence whilst the legal process goes on. Mahama did the same, and many of the jurisdictions where we have some of these things, that the outcomes are not satisfactory to both. Of course, when you go through a process like this, depending on the type of process, you can both win, you can both lose. One can win, one may not lose. So, but the mutuality and charting a way forward is always very important, and that's why I'm talking about reality. So what I think that the party that has lost, and it has happened in the past, there have been processes that they submitted to, the outcomes were not favorable, and sometimes were favorable, and I think that with that experience, the parties should be able to explore any other avenue that is available, but the option of violence or encouraging people to engage in violence should not be one that anyone will encourage, because it will not help the matter. Because come to think about it, over decades, these people have intertwined. They have intermarried. They have, doing things in common. And if you go there, it's almost difficult to say that this is a Maprusi, this is a Kosasi, except those of them who are in there. So I think that the blood that has, fertilized both of them over the decades is enough to say that they belong to each other, and that they are into each other. And so I would encourage that they should maybe have the discussions and see what are the other options that are available, for us to be part of the normal scheme of things, and still be able to maintain our dignity, be able to have our well-being. And again, those who have lost, who think or perceive that they have won, and I would not want anyone, to be engaged in commentaries that, would provoke other people. Because it's not, we say that you do not flog a dead horse, or somebody who is on the ground. You don't have to, because there is already a difficulty in accepting what the situation is, the reality. And so if you make commentaries that again would suggest that, the person is on the losing side and that the person is a weakling and all that, it creates a tendency for the person to want to emphasize certain things, which will not help the cause. So I think that, as I indicated, the statement from the Abu Palace, indicates that, there is that extension of a peace leave. How do we move forward? And I think it's a good thing to do, because if you think you have something in your mouth, you don't need to back or to talk so much, and that may fall out. So I think what has happened, we would encourage both of them to restrain themselves and to prevent the commentaries that, if I am the party that is currently holding the skin, I would not want to have any of my members say anything that will provoke anyone. That will make any reconciliation, any development initiative difficult, because at the end, it will spoil the matter and make it very worse. And it may even go beyond what we have at the moment. So I think that is something that we should encourage. And the platforms that they are using, there are elements who definitely will still be want to be defiant. Can they call them to order, both parties, and let them know that, yes, because of who we are, an identity, a common identity as people from Bawku, we need to move forward. We need to make sure that we have our well-being. We need to make sure that, our generations will not be in the situation that we are in now, as some of them have come to meet. I've always said, because we have elders from both ends, and they have gone through several processes. Because I recall the BPI, Bawku Peace Initiative. I recall Damango, Sekotap, Center for Conflict Transformation and Peace Studies, which used to be called Unity Center, that engaged them. I recall Kumasi. They have been to several places, even beyond Kumasi and also into Accra, that areas. I am wondering what really, those elders cannot do to support any of these processes, rather than probably the youth getting statements that may incense everything and maybe draw us back. I would think that the government, as I said, should, hasten to, but not in a way that would let them lose out on certain critical steps. As Richard indicated, there is a need to be tactful. If they are not tactful, in pushing forward this process in terms of the implementation of the recommendations and the paper that they themselves have issued, it may become something that will be telling on all of us again, and it can be difficult. I have asked, what is it that people who are in peace, can benefit? So incentives for peace, and I think the 1 billion Ghana cedis that has been pledged, for the redevelopment of Bawku, because if you go there, a lot has happened without Bawku over the years. A lot has happened, and if the people still feel the heat of the lack of development, the agricultural production that used to be very vibrant and supplying a lot in the country, the trade that used to take place, and everybody was traveling to Bawku to buy things, cereals, to buy animals and all that, and to return to their various places. If this do not happen again, and almost immediately, it can be very difficult. So I think that the government should look at the recommendations and the white paper they have issued, affirming, but they should do things tactfully. As I said, how do they clarify some of the issues and misunderstandings? How do they still clarify some of the positions that the parties have, which they are issuing statements about? It will help the cause for us to work towards reconciliation and stability in the area.
From your experience in doing peace building, etc., do you foresee any challenges in this process? Of course, there's a rival chief installed, and from the report, government must facilitate a safe passage to the Nayeri's palace, and Nayeri is also being entreated to give him some other role, perhaps in his palace to perform, etc. These are, quite challenging things. Do you foresee difficulties in the process, and how can government soften the process so that, the pain is not as much as maybe ordinarily felt by the other side?
It's always difficult, as I said, the reality. And somebody who probably has enjoyed some relevance within the society and within his people, from his people. And then there are recommendations that, certain processes or activities should be undertaken. Obviously, there is going to be a certain feeling, to accept such moves. And so it can be expected that a little bit of resistance or whatever, but then, as I indicated, it requires tact, because at the moment there's security presence, and one would expect that all the challenging areas, terrains that there appears to be experiences of violence, sniper attacks and all that should be looked at quite critically, and new ones that may be developed, or people may have the tendency to engage in. So it will require a lot of tact, conversation by the government, and other stakeholders who would have the ear of the Nigerian, who would have the ear of the people, the Mamprusis in Bawku, including the parallel person, as indicated. So I think that we require conversation for them to get to know that this is where we are, and that it is possible. I can recall in the case of Dagbon, for example, it got to a stage where it was quite difficult for certain people to move. But then conversations enabled that, and that happened. I think that it's also possible for Bawku to go through that experience, and it could also be more exemplary to other locations that may have similar things in the future. So the government, as I said, should hasten, but to tarry, they should not do things just because probably they have the power, because at the end, the key thing is, how do we contain the situation? How do we make sure that our own interventions do not do harm to the good process? Because all the parties, acknowledge that there is a need for peace, and that there's a need to move forward, and that there's a need for them to live together once again as people of the same blood, because, as I said, the blood has been mixed over years. So I think that it requires tact, reasoning for them to move forward on that.
I see. Richard, 1 billion cedi revitalization fund. How do we begin applying this fund? This is what Bawku is getting, of course, because Bawku is being, quote unquote, the battlefield or the battleground. can we do something for the people on the other side as well, so they know that indeed they may not have lost out entirely? Or you think because Bawku was a battleground and Bawku has been a place that has suffered difficulties leading to economic struggles, etc., that should be where our attention must be focused?
So you want to create problem for me and my uncle Albert this morning. The word is not lost. The word is favorable outcome and non-favorable outcome, because nobody has lost. It's just a status code that Ashanti Hino went for with a prehistorical background and came up with those outcomes. But then again, I agree. I'm thinking that once the implementations begin to fester, we should ask Imani Ghana, Frank Kujo and his team to do a financial risk assessment to see whether the monies are being used for the purposes for which they have been outlined. And the specific projects earmarked for the monies have been followed, so that we could have value for money, we could have quality work done, and we can have the various catchment areas covered in the disbursement of the money. Government, white people also say that they want to spread the money for 4 years, so that at the end of the 4 years, when we do project audit risk assessment, we'll be able to say we have achieved what is needed and we might need more, or we have surplus to spend elsewhere. But having said that, Bawku itself has come under high levels of pressure, and there has been a lot of destructive activities over the years. So that is why you can understand Bawku became the focal point for the 1 billion. Other than that, nothing stops government to develop all the parts of the northern region, or the northeast we call it. I call it the upper east region, right down from Boga to Bawku, through Nankpaduri to Kusika to Narilugu to Walewale to Navrongo to Paga. I've spent about 4 to 5 years within all those areas. And there's a huge need for infrastructure because of the deficit they suffered. And so we should take the conversation out of the Bawku mediation and say that there's a need for infrastructure development within the upper east region. Then we can bring home the conversation that government has a responsibility of providing the leading role in developing the place. Yes, of course, 1 billion. I believe as the economy develops, we can make it 3 billion, so that 2 billion will also go into some other areas, develop the agriculture line, the irrigation lines, set up an airport at Boga, and make sure we have the rail lines running to and fro. It will make Bawku beat up some of the big cities in this country, and everybody will be fine.
Very well. Thanks so much. Richard, you remain on the next panel. But Albert, thank you so much. We understand this is a very delicate discussion, and thanks so much for holding it quite well. We will continue to rely on your expertise in these matters. Thank you so much, and very good morning to all the people in Bawku and Mount Prusi areas. We are rooting for both of you, and we hope that this brings lasting peace so that we can be happy as a people. Thank you so much. I'll take a short break. When I return, we will delve into the matter of the repealed LI 2462 and matters arising. This is a big issue on 97.3 City FM. Don't go away, we'll be right back.